Big news, another law firm has fought Donald Trump's administration and its illegal executive orders and won. Welcome back to Democracy Docket. I'm Marc Elias.
And I'm Paige Moskowitz. Let's get started.
You know, Paige, every week it seems like we get another order and opinion from a federal judge saying that Donald Trump's targeting of a law firm was illegal and unconstitutional. The most recent one now is WilmerHale, a big law firm based in Washington, D.C. and Boston. It just had the executive order targeting it struck down. This follows the end of last week when a judge struck down a similar executive order, almost identical, targeting Jenner & Block, a big Chicago-based law firm. And of course, that was only a week or so after another judge struck down an order that was targeting Perkins Coie, my former law firm.
Right. Trump targeted this latest law firm because of its connections to Robert Mueller, the special counsel that investigated Trump's connection to Russia during his first term. The judge in this case, like the judge in all the other cases, said that Trump appeared to be trying to coerce these law firms into coming to an agreement with him. That Trump was targeting these firms because they had worked with his so-called political enemies. And the judge's ruling today, he said the corner of the American system of justice is an independent judiciary and an independent bar willing to tackle unpopular cases, however daunting.
Yeah. And so, I think it's important to not just focus here on the law firms that won, because that's obviously a big deal. And it's why we are doing this video, to let you know that another big law firm fought and another big law firm won. But I think it is important, Paige, to take a step back now that we have rulings in 3 of these cases, final decisions in 3 of the cases. We actually have preliminary rulings in an additional one, but final rulings in 3 of these to talk about kind of some of the common themes and the lessons learned. And I think there is no bigger common theme in all of these than the contempt that the judges have for what the Trump administration did. I mean, they are not just striking these down. They are angry. They are speaking in very, very stark terms about the threat, not just to these law firms, but to the entire system, but also the utter humiliation that the big law firms that settled are facing. I mean, I just wrote something for Democracy Docket about, the situation that Paul Weiss finds itself in after several of its senior partners left over the weekend, presumably in part because it chose to settle with Donald Trump. But this is really, I think, we are reaching a watershed moment in the legal establishment where the tide has shifted from people thinking, okay, the firms have to settle because otherwise they won't be able to stay in business because of they'll be on Donald Trump's bad list, to actually now the law firms have to fight because, look, when you fight, you win and judges praise you and you don't get the scorn and humiliation for having caved.
Marc, I think a lot of people watching may be saying, okay, I'm not a lawyer. I don't work in the legal profession. Why should I care that these big law firms are choosing between coming to an agreement with the Trump administration, pledging hundreds of $millions to take on pro bono cases, or if they're fighting in court against these executive orders? Why should I, as an average American, care about what's going on between Trump and these law firms?
Yeah, so look, shortly after Donald Trump came to office, I wrote a series of pieces for Democracy Docket, and they were predicting that we were going to be in the situation that we're in now, that you were going to see large institutions bowing down. At that point, we had already seen billionaires fly their private planes. Remember that whole spectacle, and then sit on the stage. We saw parts of the legacy media capitulating. And you never want to see big, powerful, wealthy institutions give in to Donald Trump, because all that does is make him stronger as he continues to target other aspects of civil society, both other large aspects of civil society and smaller players in civil society. So the fact that you saw big law firms cave, it meant that when he then moved on to the universities, when he then moved on to other businesses, there became a sense that everybody is bowing down to Donald Trump. So, we at Democracy Docket, we pledged very, very early. I mean, you can go on our website and take a look. We pledged very early that we were never going to bow down. We were never going to bend a knee. There was nothing Donald Trump could do to affect Democracy Docket's willingness to stand up to Donald Trump and to Republicans and to the big lie advocates. And it was going to continue to do its work. And in fact, it was going to expand its mission. We said that, early in the early days after Donald Trump lost. And many of you watching this video, became subscribers. You became premium subscribers and helped provide financial support for Democracy Docket to do its work. You became free subscribers to get the information. You started following this YouTube channel, and all of that is critical. So if you haven't done that already, please do all of those things. But that was an important moment because it showed that there was an appetite for people to stand up, not just Democracy Docket, but other independent news outlets, other law firms. I have a law firm. We also said we would not bow down even after I was targeted by Donald Trump in executive orders. We saw some of the universities. Harvard University has stood up to Donald Trump. And so there became this push and pull. And so the reason why people need to care about large law firms is for the same reason they need to care about Harvard. I mean, look, I've had my critiques and criticisms about Harvard. Don't get me wrong. But it's vital to see them stand up, because when you have these big players stand up, it makes it easier for everybody else. On the other hand, when you see large law firms or large universities cave and capitulate, it makes it harder for other people to stand up. And to the extent we're all trying to survive an authoritarian wannabe, we need more courage. And it's great to see these law firms displaying courage, and it is good to see that the law firms that displayed cowardice suffering some consequences.
Marc, something you had mentioned before is that a lot of these big law firms actually partner with organizations like the ACLU or the NAACP when they bring civil rights lawsuits, right? I think a lot of people think, well, when First Amendment rights are under attack, it's the ACLU who sues, right? But it's often they're working with these larger law firms to bring these lawsuits because it takes a lot of time and people and money to bring these successful cases.
Yeah, and in these lawsuits, their pro bono, the work that these law firms have done, has been pointed out in a number of the lawsuits and in the court decisions. I mean, my former law firm, Perkins Coie, one of the things that they were targeted over, in addition to the fact that I'd once worked there, had to do with some work they had done in the pro bono space. WilmerHale, the law firm that prevailed today, is a big law firm in the pro bono space. They do a lot of work for needy causes, for organizations that represent people in civil rights cases, people who represent people who can't afford lawyers. And Paul Weiss, the big first capitulator, did a tremendous amount of work in the pro bono arena to protect civil liberties and individual freedoms. And, to listen to Donald Trump now talk about, as you say, I think it's close to $1 billion of pro bono legal services that these capitulating law firms have now promised to him, so that they can represent in his ideal, the coal companies, police officers accused of misconduct, right? It not only makes the work of the progressive groups harder, but it makes all law firms less willing or more hesitant to take on progressive pro bono projects because they don't want to be targeted. Well, to see a WilmerHale get vindicated makes it now, a little easier for those law firms. People can stand a little taller. They can have a little more courage, and maybe they'll do a little bit more pro bono for groups that need the work to stand up against authoritarianism.
Marc, the question everyone always asks when these types of rulings come down are, okay, but what if they just appeal? What if it goes up to the US Supreme Court? So what's your take on what may happen next?
Yeah, so interestingly, the Department of Justice and the Trump administration have not appealed any of the orders. They did not appeal the Perkins Coie loss they had. They have not appealed the Jenner decision. I kind of think they won't appeal any of them. And that's because I think they know that if these cases went to the Court of Appeals, they would lose there. If they went to the Supreme Court, they'd lose there. And what the Trump administration is really trying to do is to stigmatize these law firms through these executive orders. And every time the Trump administration loses in court, it takes a little of that stigma away. And it makes it harder for the Trump administration to roll over some other law firm or some other large institution. Paige, every time the Harvard universities of the world don't capitulate and instead litigate, which Harvard is doing, and that's also, we could do a whole episode just on Harvard litigation. It means that there are other universities who are saying, well, we're not going to give in either. Let's see how the Harvard case goes. And that's, I think, also true with the big law firms, which is, I think, one of the reasons why you haven't seen Donald Trump announce any recent settlements with big law firms. You haven't heard him target any more big law firms because he's losing all these cases. But I don't think they want the prospect of losing these cases again at a higher court and maybe even at the U.S. Supreme Court. So I suspect that Donald Trump is going to lick his wounds with these law firms. He's already got $1 billion lined up of pro bono legal services with the cowardly law firms that capitulated. And so I think he'll just bank on that and maybe hopefully move on from the legal establishment. Thank you, every one of you who has signed up for Democracy Docket. We are well on our way to 500,000 YouTube subscribers. Our goal is to get there by July 10th. So please tell your friends, make sure they're subscribed to this YouTube channel, and make sure you click the bell so that you get alerted every time there is new content. Thank you. We'll see you next time.